apparently have some unguided misconceptions about hydraulic fracturing.
Yeah.
The state of New York has banned all fracking in the state of
What
New
you
York.
have to understand is that there are regulations in place, not only from the local, the state, and the federal level. And that is the way that the systems are designed. It's a safe process. It's used to enhance.
Is that why New York banned it? Is that why New York banned it?
Ma'am, wait until you for the presentation. You must be willing to listen. So thank you for listening. What you are looking at is a proposal to drill some wells in an area that is undeveloped. It is undeveloped not only from the surface, it is undeveloped from subsurface. And to allow for the development of the subsurface, you have to have access. It just happens that this particular chosen
I was a
site
geophysicist, and I understand
falls
too.
within the regulations, and it is allowable at that site. As part of the oversight, at one time, I was the regulator for Oklahoma City and enforced these rules. And at the time that the wells were drilled on the north side of Lake Hefner, we implemented the rules, saw to it that they were adhered to, and they're a good, safe process.
You used to be a regulator for Oklahoma City, and now you work for Pedestal. What are the odds?
Those of you who have come to Oklahoma from other parts of the country are not going to have the same thought processes and ideas that those of us that live here. This is a
I've lived in my home a half block from Portland since 1977.
Let us finish.
And you think I'm not
There
scared?
are a multitude of wells in that area already. In Oklahoma County, there are over 7,000 wells in Oklahoma County. The drilling was started in the early 1900s. The processes that were used in the early 1900s are not the same as they're done today. The safeguards, the safety aspects, the well construction, protect the environment is not the same that it was 50 years ago. Even in the last 10 years, the environmental safeguards have changed exponentially. They've gone tremendously more restrictive. And the way that well sites are constructed virtually eliminates the contamination risk. This is a short-term process. The drilling operation takes from 14 to 20 days. The rig is in there, it's out, it's gone. And as far as the noise parts of it, there are ordinances in place for noise levels. The city has people who are trained with noise systems to enforce those regulations. So with the advent of sound walls, the time of the year for the wind, very little sound will actually get away from that site.
Why does that have to be developed? Why can't it stay the way it is?
Should I address your question?
No, you don't want to address anything. Just tell us how pretty it's going to be.
The operation is one that is very scientifically sound and is very beneficial from a revenue standpoint to the citizens of Oklahoma City, because the property produces a revenue stream that will go directly back into redevelopment of the systems and the facilities that the city has. It's not uncommon. If you look at Will Rogers Airport and many of the parks, they all have oil revenues associated with them, and it's very beneficial to the city. The access to and from that site, just to kind of step back on it a little bit, there are state rules, there are city rules, that affect the loads that go in and out. It's highly regulated. So being able to operate under those regulations is difficult for oil companies, and most of the companies really try to be good neighbors, good citizens, and to benefit the overall citizenry of the state.
Thank you.
How condescending and insulting you were. Your arrogance is insulting.
All right. The next part of our presentation is for me to speak briefly on what happens to the money should the oil and gas actually be found, should they do this. Okay? So, in Oklahoma City, we have a water and wastewater utilities department. All of us are city employees. We support the trust, the water trust operations that pays the debt service on the capital improvements, construct the capital improvements, and provide the water and sewer service for all the citizens in the metro area. That is funded from water and sewer payments from the bills that people pay. Recreational improvements on the reservations, at the lakes, at Atoka, at Overholser, at Draper, and at Hefner, those improvements to those recreational activities, the grant local share match funds that Aquit contributes when grants are sought out for boat ramps or for trails or parking lots, those kinds of things. The funds from those come from non-ratepayer fund sources, not from the water sewer payments on the bills. Non-ratepayer fund sources are things like oil and gas revenues, where we have exploration that has occurred on trust properties. They come from the wet and dry stall fees when people park their boats in the wet and dry stalls at the lakes. From leases that we have on properties like out at West Elm Creek where people use for grazing cattle and things. Off-road vehicle permits at Draper. We have East Wharf for the payments for the activities that are there to fund these improvements. So in this situation, if there is any oil and gas revenues created from this, they've already been pre-designated many years ago to non-ratepayer funded activities. If you look at the children's playground south of East Wharf, the new road that was put in and parking area that was put in for the playground for the children, that was funded from non-ratepayer funding sources like East Wharf leases, oil and gas revenue leases. So all these improvements that you see at the lakes come from those very sources. Just like if this happened, the funds are already designated 100% to those types of activities. And we have something called a non-ratepayer capital improvement program of items that citizen groups that recreate at the lakes have participated in expressing what they would like to see occur at the lakes. And a lot of those things are unfunded at this time because we do not have enough non-ratepayer funding sources to fund those improvements. So as we get those done, we save up money for years, we save up money and we do those improvements. So that's how that program works. So I want to make sure you understood that. And at this time, what we have next is a question and answer period where we have questions that have been brought forth. And I think Lisa, we need to get the questions.
Has there been any proposed revenue share on the lease? The city, what's the percentage of the lease the city would get?
21%.
21%?
You just made a case to tell us that you're biased on this program with this proposal.
What about the water for the fracking? Is that being talked about tonight, where that's coming from?
Okay, so I took, hi. I'm Marcia Slaughter, I'm the Utilities Director for Oklahoma City. I took your notes, some of them are, many of you made comments, we respect that, and we'll record those as well, but they weren't particularly questions. So what we'll do is I found a few clear questions. One of them is about the water that's used in the drilling process, and I will ask Pedestal for that. But first, I answered the question about what percentage, that's 21%. I have a question about drilling on wetlands. The places where we'll be drilling are not wetlands, straight up. I appreciate that it's a lake.
It seems to me that you aren't listening to our questions now, and you may not have listened. You may not listen to what we have submitted to you either.
Amen. What is your question?
You know, so, like, hi. Isn't this a beautiful place?
We love beauty, that's why we don't want the wells.
You know, last time we had a meeting, there were 20. So,
Does anyone do about it?
Yeah, that would help.
Anyone know about it?
I found out about it yesterday. And I live a half block from Portland. And I am scared. Hell no, I don't
We
read
sent
it.
messages to people who came to the previous meeting and to presidents.
Underhandedly, so people would not show up. Exactly. Let's be transparent about it.
Are you
So,
going to address some of the questions?
I am. Is that going to give you a chance to talk?
Well, why don't you go ahead with
Okay.
one of the questions and answer it, then maybe we can get along with it.
Questions and answers.
Okay, noise ordinances. Yes, noise ordinances apply. They are site-specific in some cases. There'll be measurements taken. We'll use measurements from past drilling operations. And again, there are additional rules for lake properties.
Start calling and emailing the mayor and the water utilities trust.
Traffic management. Traffic management. You asked questions about driver safety, who's going to drive the trucks, and how many truck loads it will take. I'm going to turn that over to Pedestal in a minute, along with the question about how much water is used. An additional question that I think I can answer for you is about lake protection. The requirements of the Water Trust regulations for drilling operations on their land are for the drilling operation to be diked. In this case, we'll be putting in multiple dikes
They
to
already
protect.
talked about that.
You keep saying it like past tense, like it's already been approved.
What's
I thought it had not been
if
approved.
something goes wrong?
Mike, it isn't approved yet. I've seen a couple of emails from you. Nice to meet you. No, it's not approved. I think you've already heard about the approval process. You know that it's multiple layers. You know that what we're doing is vetting the issue, finding out from citizens what they're interested in. Because we knew we would have so many citizens, we asked you to fill out forms. We gave you cards and we gave you a form. Some of you have done that, others of you haven't. Please do continue to complete those forms. We're making a list. We have a list of about 100 individual emails with questions. We're developing answers to those questions. We put some information in response to your questions. We put some information online at fkc.gov about the proposal itself and about the drilling regulations that are required. Yes, sir. Wait, I got a question. I'm going to take questions one at a time.
My question to you on my card was, how much water will be required, and where will that water come from?
Okay, so
Usually when you drill a well, if you're out in
the question, could you repeat it?
yeah, he wanted to know, he wanted to know where the water comes from when you drill a well. When you're out in a rural area, usually you negotiate with the landowner and...
Where will this water?
Well, let me get to it, please, okay? Let me get to it, all right? When you're out in a rural area, you usually negotiate with a landowner, and he's got enough in his pond, he will sell it to you. Or you drill a water well, and you use the water, and that's a negotiated thing with the landowner, and then you give him the well, because many times they need a water well and they can't afford to drill it themselves. As far as you municipalities are concerned, what we've done in the past is we buy it from the city. In Edmond, we go ahead and buy it from the city. It doesn't come out of Lake Hefner. It comes usually, you go buy a flush meter from a fire hydrant, just like the people do when they go ahead and put in roads. So that's it.
How much water will be required approximately?
I'd say probably several thousand barrels of water. I'm just explaining how it usually, where the water comes from.
yes, sir. In front.
Jack White, and at one time I was director of finance for the state of Oklahoma.
Nice to see you.
I understand something about bidding. This appears to be a sole source operation. Have you considered, if you want to have it drilled, have you considered sending out bids and letting different operating companies propose?
So John's question is about bidding. Seems to be a sole source proposal. Here's what the Water Trust does when it gets unsolicited proposals, which is what this is. The staff takes those proposals to the Water Trust and says, do you want us to pursue this? Don't you want us to pursue this? They told us we can pursue it to figure it out. That's where we are. Now they did that 3 years ago. Excuse me, I'm taking individual, the lady in the hat.
How many people depend on this water for food, for drinking?
About 100,000.
How many?
About 100,000.
So we're 100,000 people are susceptible to anything that can happen, will happen, Murphy's Law. So there's thousands of people that
Personally, I think of a much greater risk of the trucks that drive over the top of the dam. But that's my opinion as an environmental engineer. The man behind the lady.
Does the Water Utilities Trust have an official position on the proposal?
No.
Because it seems as though, just from me standing here, there's a lot of questions that are being asked of the experts that are providing information. Understand this is not an official meeting. You guys called this as an informational meeting and more of a presentation. So I believe that the expectation of this meeting was not exactly what you intended it for it to be. But it seems as there's some very educated, well-educated people that have informed questions. Those questions are being posed to the experts that are giving their presentations. Those experts are either choosing not to answer or they're not being allowed to answer. The one question that I had, which was the Water Utilities Trust does not have a position on the proposal at this time. However, will there be a time where these people who are involved in this process, from Pedestal, from the engineering group, from the Water Utilities Trust, will be available to the general public for a informed, extended length Q&A period where these people, my daughter and I do not live up here. We travel from South Moore and ride Lake Hefner 3-4 times a week. It's the only place in the city that we can go other than up and down the river where we can ride our bikes and not be worried about cars. Okay? It's a great place. The city has done phenomenal work to make this area